And we're back for another segment of On the Record with Tiffany. Today, I have one of my favorite doctors as a guest, Dr. Donald Wesson. Dr. Wesson, will you tell my audience a little bit about yourself and why you're here?
Well, thanks, Tiffany, for having me. I'm a kidney doctor by training and just recently retired as president of the Baylor Scott and White Health and Wellness Center, which is the population health entity of Baylor Scott and White Health in Dallas. My focus for many years has been how do we not only better treat chronic kidney disease, but how do we even prevent chronic kidney disease? And as you and I have talked about over the years, Tiffany, 20 years ago, research in my basic science laboratory in animals showed that a plant-based diet was kidney healthy. In other words, it slowed the worsening of kidney disease in these animals. And we were able to translate these studies into people, and we were able to show the same thing there. That is, a primarily plant-based diet is kidney healthy in that these individuals who already have a reduced kidney function, the rate of worsening can be reduced by this plant-based diet. And so that is something that we have now begun instituting locally here in Dallas as a way by which to prevent worsening of kidney disease in individuals who either have kidney disease or at risk of having kidney disease. And so that then points to my latest focus is to establish an infrastructure for what we call community-based management of chronic kidney disease. In other words, pushing that management from the doctor's office to include it being done in communities in places where folks at risk of chronic kidney disease already live.
Now, Dr. Wesson, one of the reasons why I brought you on is because you are a pioneer in that. That's not a new concept that you are talking about, inclusion of the community. It's actually something that you work. I think you've created the best model I've seen of that. So can you
Well,
tell us a little bit
well,
about?
I appreciate that, Tiffany, and it really is just based on research that people have developed over the years. We recognize that all chronic disease is the outcomes for it is minimally improved by medical care. In fact, overall chronic disease, the studies show that medical care that we as medical professionals render contributes to about 20% of the outcomes of chronic disease. That is, you can 20% of what makes folks better is happening in the doctor's office. 60% is what happens outside of the doctor's office. That is how we live, mostly how we eat and how we move, and these so-called lifestyle modifications. And a big part of lifestyle modification is what we eat. And so what we have really done in the work that we've done here in Dallas is simply applied these lifestyle modifications at the level of the community and provided an infrastructure by which folks can eat better and move better. And our studies, as you and I have talked over the years, have shown that this community-based management is helpful. Now, I'm not saying that you should abandon your doctor and not see your doctor at all. So let me get that clear from the start.
That's right. Don't send us any emails or letters about abandoning your doctor. Nobody's
Not at
telling you to
all.
do
In
that.
fact, quite the contrary. These so-called lifestyle changes are good accompaniments of the medical care that the medical professionals provide. So diabetes is probably the best example. We've known for decades that the best way to manage diabetes is medical care, healthy eating, and healthy moving. In other words, exercise. We've known that for
Yes.
years. The problem has been that we've got a good infrastructure for the medical part, but we don't have a good infrastructure to support folks doing the nutrition or the healthy eating part and the healthy moving or increasing our physical activity part. We've translated that into what the care that we do for chronic kidney disease, in that we continue the standard management, medication management and the like for chronic kidney disease, but very importantly have added the nutritional component and the physical activity component, and setting up an infrastructure that the food component and the physical activity component can be done in the communities where individuals live. So they don't have to come see us in the doctor's office
Right.
to eat well. They don't have to come see us in the doctor's office to have structured physical activity. We've set up these infrastructures at local churches and community centers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the key. You don't cut off from your doctor. You continue to have a good relationship with your doctor because he or she is providing that medical care. But what is very important is added to that medical care are the so-called lifestyle modifications, which include primarily healthy eating and healthy moving.
But it's easier to learn healthy eating from people that you already know, or in an environment that you already know and that you're comfortable in. So I really love this model. You know, I say all the time that the only reason why I'm not in the same boat as the rest of my family, I've lost 9 family members to kidney disease.
Oh boy.
And I have 3 who have it right now, 3 who are in end stage renal disease right now, others who have other stages of chronic kidney disease, and it was changing what I ate. It was losing 187 pounds in a 2.5 year period. I tried everything. I tried weight loss surgery. I tried uh, pills. I tried extreme diets. I tried regular diets. I tried, tried all of the stuff. And then I finally made the decision that I was going to do it. Like, regardless of what went on, I would get this weight off because at that time, my husband and I were getting ready to adopt a little girl. And when we found out that we could adopt her, that I knew that I could not be a 340-pound mother and turn my little girl into a 340-pound little girl,
Yes.
because she would want to be who I was, and that was a part of who I was at that time. So,
Yes.
but that change 10 years ago changed my life. I stopped being diabetic. I was diabetic. I had hypertension. I had an enlarged heart. You name it. I had the problem: sleep apnea, acid reflux. Just the, I had problems with my joints and knees, and all of that changed when I started losing the weight. Now, for me to lose the weight, I had to unplug from television, and I thought, because I had to change how I thought, I had to change the ticker tape that was running in my head, which is far more than just not eating ice cream.
Yes.
A weight problem of that nature means that you how you are relating to people and food is fundamentally wrong, and you need to change it.
Well, Tiffany, what you're describing is one of the things that we've recognized in our work over the last 10 years or so, is that we really have to change um, the medical model that
Mhm.
all of us medical professionals were trained to what we call a health model.
Yes.
And so from the medical standpoint, the way that we've trained folks in this country, and not just in this country, across the world, is to passively receive health care from healthcare professionals. In other words, when
Hmm.
I have a health problem, I go and see a healthcare professional, commonly a physician, and she or he then provides help to me, passively receive it.
Mm-hmm.
What your story has demonstrated and what our experience in Dallas has shown is that the successful model is having the individuals partner with their healthcare provider as an active participant. So
Exactly.
they aren't simply passively receiving healthcare. They are receiving direction from their healthcare provider, but they are actively participating in their care. And this goes beyond simply following the doctor's or nurse's orders of taking medication when you take it. Yes, you should do that. But in addition, it's eating as you have described. It is moving. And notice I'm very carefully not using that four-letter word exercise.
Mm-hmm.
We are increasing our physical activity, because when you tell folks they need to exercise, they don't listen anymore.
They shut down.
But
That's
when you
it.
say, but when you say, let's increase your physical activity, then most folks say, tell me more.
Uh-huh.
So the real key is us now becoming active participants in our health, and our major contribution to our health in collaboration with our healthcare providers
Yeah.
is healthy eating
Mm-hmm.
and healthy moving, and then being directed as to the medical component by our healthcare provider. So for us, the recipe for health is three components: medical, nutrition, and physical activity. That's what we call health. And so I was told that as a physician that I was trained to provide health care. But what I've learned over the last 30 years or so is that that's not correct. I was trained to provide medical care. The other two components that are important are nutrition and physical activity. That completes the healthcare equation.
And you have been listening to Dr. Donald Wesson on the Record with Tiffany. Come back for our next segment. Keep listening, because Dr. Wesson is teaching us how to be an empowered, active participant in our healthcare, because that's what will help us beat things like a pandemic, like the epidemic of chronic kidney disease, and many of the other ailments that are out there that are plaguing our society. We have to take control of the things that we can control, and that's what we put in our mouths and how we move. Come back, listen to Dr. Wesson. If you have kidney disease in your family, if you have diabetes or hypertension, you're going to want to come and listen to what Dr. Wesson has to say. And you're listening to On the Record with Tiffany. And we're back with On the Record with Tiffany and my special guest, Dr. Don Wesson. Dr. Wesson, will you talk with us a little bit about your model of medical, nutrition, and physical activity, and how that relates to what's going on in the kidney community today?
Well, let's talk about chronic disease in general. As we've talked about before, the greatest single contribution to good outcomes from chronic disease is lifestyle. And that's most notably nutrition and physical activity. The data across the board shows that about 60% of good outcomes is contributed to by healthy eating and healthy moving. And the data are supportive that that's the same thing. The same thing is true for chronic kidney disease. So when we talk about medical care, we're talking about what healthcare professionals like myself, physicians and nurses provide. But the other two parts of the health equation is healthy eating and healthy moving. So as we were talking about last time, the health equation is medical care, nutrition, and increased physical activity. So that's with chronic disease in general. Now, chronic kidney disease is a bit special in that people can have significant kidney disease, and it can advance to significantly bad stages with them feeling absolutely fine.
Exactly.
And in fact, when chronic kidney disease becomes symptomatic, that is, when patients start to feel badly and they present themselves to a healthcare system, often the kidney disease is very far advanced, and we have limited ways by which we can prevent further worsening. And many times we're talking about preparing individuals for what we call kidney replacement therapy, either kidney dialysis or kidney transplant. And so that's not an outcome that we kidney doctors want to see. We want to be able to identify individuals early, very early in the course of their progression of chronic kidney disease when they're feeling fine, because we know when we detect it early in the course, we have the best opportunity to intervene and stop its progression, or at the very least, slow its progression. And so that gets into the issue of screening for chronic kidney disease.
Now, that's a big deal for me and for our organization, because my day job, when I'm not doing this, is is uh, is heading up the Texas Kidney Foundation, and our purpose is to bring awareness to chronic kidney disease and to screen and identify the disease early, because early detection is the key to mitigating the spread of this disease.
Absolutely.
If we can just screen and identify the disease and begin to move people down the road to the empowering aspect of taking control of your health. If we can get them to your medical, nutrition, physical activity model from there, because that's what we do. That's part of our continuum of care. Is we work with a wonderful organization called It's Time Texas, and they are lifestyle based. They are the lifestyle component that we utilize throughout the state, because they have trained nutritionists, and they'll call you and text. They call our patients and text them, and they have trained renal dietitians that, and their job is, the reason I like the model is because their job is to come in and meet you where you're at. They're not
Absolutely.
coming in and telling you what to do, because if they're running into a bunch of Tiffany's, when I was 340 pounds, then some skinny chick can't come in and tell me what to do. You're gonna have to let me tell you what I'm willing to do.
Well, Tiffany, I applaud the organization for the screening that it does, because as you and I have talked over the years, that's key. But let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about two levels of screening.
Yeah.
So one would be at the health system, and another, which I really advocate, is at the level of the community.
Yep.
So in the health system, one is already within that system and certainly can be fairly easily screened. Clearly, there are blood tests. A chemical we call creatinine in the blood can determine the presence of chronic kidney disease. But I tell you, the one that we really focus on is this urine screening for the amount of albumin that's in the urine. It's the type of protein. The higher the albumin that's in the urine, the more at risk one is to have chronic kidney disease. And so we really emphasize, particularly with my primary care colleagues, that they more routinely get a urine albumin excretion or a urine albumin to creatinine ratio or an ACR. Many of the primary care doctors know what that's about, but unfortunately it's not routinely done. And so we kidney doctors are emphasizing that if you have three settings, diabetes, high blood pressure, or a history of chronic kidney disease in your family, you should have a urine albumin or an albumin creatinine ratio done. Let me say that again. If you got diabetes, you have high blood pressure, or a history of kidney disease in your family, if your medical professional has not gotten that within the last year, you should encourage them to get albumin to creatinine ratio, because that will determine your risk. And even if you have normal kidney function, but if you have a high albumin in your urine, that puts you at risk, and you should be getting these kidney preventive kinds of interventions.
Exactly.
Blood pressure control, particular blood pressure medicines that we use to control it, and the type of diets that we're going to talk about in a second. That is the health system screening. What I and others and yourself have been emphasizing lately is that it shouldn't stop there. We should do what we would call community-based screening, particularly in high-risk communities.
Yes.
The high-risk communities being those that are low income, predominantly African American, predominantly Hispanic. If you've got communities like that, by definition, our data says that those communities are at high risk of getting chronic kidney disease. So clearly, we should focus our efforts on those high-risk communities. And so we in Dallas have done this type of screening in churches, in community centers, and we find an alarmingly high rate of chronic kidney disease just by doing routine screenings in these high-risk communities and churches and recreation centers. That is not a general recommendation nationally now that we do this kind of screening at the community level, but I, and I'm sure you, continue to emphasize the importance of that. And I think the more data our laboratory and others gather to show the importance of that community-based screening, I'm optimistic that in the future, hopefully the near future, that this will be a general recommendation that we do this type of community-based screening to identify individuals who have or who are at risk of chronic kidney disease, so we can intervene with medical, nutrition, and physical activity interventions to reduce the risk that they will develop end-stage kidney disease.
Well, you know that I'm not a medical professional. I'm like I've said before, I'm the person that whose family is going through this. So you know, all of our efforts at Texas Kidney Foundation are towards community screenings, because we find it at an alarming rate. It's, you know, 56% of the people that we test, we find with some stage of chronic kidney disease. And that's because we do that. I mean, what you just said, if you have diabetes, hypertension, or a history of kidney disease in your family, then you should get tested. That's exactly what we say in every publication, everywhere that somebody will give me a microphone. That is what I say. That's what our spokespeople say. That's what we all say, because it's a call to action.
Yes.
It's a call to action that has to be given to people. Part of the reason why we're sitting in the position that we're in right now with the pandemic, basically holding everyone hostage, is because of the underlying conditions that plague many in this nation, and many in Black and brown communities who are poor. And we see that in the death numbers that are rising, ever rising, with this plague that we're experiencing right now, or pandemic that we're experiencing right now, called COVID-19. You know, as I get the pleasure of dealing with level-headed people like you who have really done great work on for decades for people in Black and brown communities. You know, I feel hopeful that we can do better than we have been doing, but mass testing should be done. Like I
let
know
me.
y'all are debating it.
Oh yeah, and it's being debated. And again, I'm a scientist, and I understand
Right.
the debate because and we need to have strong data that supports it. And so my colleagues will remind me that they'll say, Don, when we look at the population of the United States in general, and we do that albumin to creatinine ratio test that you're talking about, we find 6 to 8% people who have a positive test indicating that they are at high risk of chronic kidney disease. And Don, from our standpoint, that's not a high enough rate to recommend the expense and the effort of doing nationwide testing of everyone. But then I say, but when I do that type of testing in our community, poor Black and brown communities, particularly the communities that surrounds our health and wellness center, the rate is 48%. So when we talk about
And
screening,
nationwide doesn't necessarily have to mean every city in the nation.
exactly,
Nationwide can mean we are pinpointing major metropolitan areas with high proportions of Black and brown people that we know are, and let's just look at the 140 million poor. We're targeting the people that fall below the poverty line. We
yes,
know that the poverty line, those below the poverty line, have healthcare disparities that don't don't exist to the same level for those of us above it.
absolutely,
So let's target the 140 million.
correct,
We don't have to make it, it doesn't have to be a Black or brown thing, because a lot of what we're experiencing is a poor people problem.
exactly, exactly,
So Black, brown, white, Asian, whatever ethnic group you're in, if you fall into that 140 million that are poor, you're likely to have, much more likely to have, healthcare disparities that we need to address.
correct,
So couldn't we target the major metropolitan cities with, and specifically the areas in those metropolitan cities that have high concentrations of poor people?
absolutely, absolutely. And as you know, Tiffany, we understandably have to make not only the health related argument, but we have to make the cost effectiveness argument in order to support policy. And we think that we can make uh, that successful cost effectiveness argument. You know how expensive kidney
Mm-hmm.
dialysis is. You
Mm-hmm.
know how expensive kidney transplant is. It is quite expensive. However, the interventions that we do to prevent individuals from developing chronic kidney disease, when we identify that they have a risk for chronic kidney disease, are relatively inexpensive. We're talking about healthy eating. We're talking about healthy moving. And for those who are candidates, we're talking about drugs that they would take on a daily basis that are relatively cheap. Many of these medications that were developed 30 years ago that we show are so-called kidney protective medicines are relatively cheap. And so our analysis suggests that if we were to do this screening and picked up about half of those individuals that I've just described in these high-risk communities who have risk for chronic kidney disease, it is indeed cost effective to give them these
Yes.
relatively inexpensive medicines, to put them on the food patterns that work for them, and to give them structured physical activity. That is a cost effective intervention to prevent them from developing what we call end stage kidney disease and the enormous expense that comes in managing those individuals.
The enormous monetary expense and the enormous human expense. The
Yes,
quality of life is it's not, if we can prevent what the toll that this takes on the quality of life for individuals who end up in end-stage renal disease, then we would be remiss in not doing it.
I agree. And as someone with a business background, I'm also uh,
Mhm.
excited
Look at the
about,
numbers. Yeah.
well, I'm excited about the numbers too, because imagine not just the health and avoidance of the cost of managing chronic kidney disease, but think, Tiffany, about these individuals now being employable and remaining employable. So
Exactly.
that is an additional
Hmm.
cost-effective benefit, that they're now better able to support their families and continue to support their families. So from our standpoint, this is a win-win all the way around. And so we feel very strongly, as I'm sure that you do, that this community-based screening is really an effective strategy that we should continue to employ to prevent and manage identified chronic kidney disease.
And you have been listening to On the Record with Tiffany and my special guest, Dr. Donald Wesson. He's a kidney doctor by trade and also a one of the best scientists I've ever come into contact with, and I meet a lot of scientists. So, thank you, Dr. Weston, and come back, you all, and listen to Dr. Weston, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about um, what do these, what does the topic of healthcare disparities mean? What does that mean to the rest of us? And how can, what are some good solutions that we have here? On the Record with Tiffany is always about solutions. So we'll be back, and you've been listening to On the Record with Tiffany. And we're back with Dr. Don Wesson. Dr. Wesson, can you tell us a little bit about the new drugs that are on the market that slow down the progression of kidney disease?
Yes, Tiffany, I'm glad to have the chance to do so. So we've known for years that blood pressure control helps to slow kidney disease, and some of the particular blood pressure medications, the so-called ACE inhibitors, or angiotensin receptor blockers, or ARBs, historically have been used and continue to be used. But in recent years, we've recognized that some of the complications of chronic kidney disease also help to worsen chronic kidney disease. And one of those is a subject that I have studied for 35 years. It's called metabolic acidosis. So one of the many things that the kidney helps to remove from our blood is acid. Just by our regular metabolism, just by the things that we eat, we add acid to the blood, and were that acid not to be removed, it can cause mischief. And one of the things that the kidney does is remove acid from the blood, puts it into the urine, and it keeps us in balance. But as kidney function declines, the kidney is less able to get rid of that acid accumulates, and we develop this condition we call metabolic acidosis. And one of the items, one of these complications that my laboratory has studied over the last 35 years is metabolic acidosis and the harm that it does. Bottom line is, when you have metabolic acidosis, it worsens kidney disease with time. When you treat metabolic acidosis, it makes it slows the progression of chronic kidney disease. And so there are medications that are on the market that we have now, most notably baking soda or sodium bicarbonate that we use to treat metabolic acidosis, that some of our studies and studies from other individuals, other labs, have shown slows the progression of chronic kidney disease. But there are newer drugs on the market that do the same thing, and I'm working with a company now that has a drug that's being tested based on some of our research to treat metabolic acidosis, and the the opportunity then to treat metabolic acidosis in a new way, in a way to not only make the metabolic acidosis better, but also to help slow the progression of chronic kidney disease. So the bottom line is that treating metabolic acidosis helps. We're trying to see if there are better ways by which to treat it that can help it even better.
What company are you working with? What company is creating the drug?
The company is called Tricida. It's based in San Francisco.
So what is when is the drug expected to get to market?
We don't know. It's still being tested. And like I said, it's been tested now for probably the last year or so, and still waiting on what the final results are going to be. And so we are optimistic and hopeful that this will be a helpful drug, but the final results are not out yet, just yet.
So Tricida is looking at slowing the progression of kidney disease, ways that they can do that.
So Tricida is looking at treating metabolic acidosis specifically as a way by which to slow the progression of kidney disease. And our laboratory has shown that metabolic acidosis makes kidney disease worse, as has other laboratories. And there are many ways by which you can treat metabolic acidosis, and some of which we have right now. Like I said, baking soda and diet are ways by which you can treat metabolic acidosis. And there are studies that suggest that treating metabolic acidosis in that way helps to slow the worsening of chronic kidney disease. This new drug that Tricida is testing is now designed to see whether or not this drug also slows the progression of chronic kidney disease. And don't have final data in just yet, but should be in the next year or two.
But it sounds promising. What do you think about the artificial kidney and some of the other solutions or potential solutions in terms of therapeutics?
Well, the artificial kidney is exciting because just like you can have machines that can take over the function of organs, many very talented scientists over the years have been working decades to come up with ways by which they can design a kidney, an artificial kidney, that unlike the dialysis machine that you have to go to the machine and have the machine clean your blood, these artificial kidneys are being designed to be attached to your body and allow you to continue to go on and do your activities of the day while that machine cleans the blood. The so-called artificial kidney is that the technology continues to develop. One of the ways by which it is developing is making it smaller and more user-friendly, and also more effective in doing the job of cleaning these wastes from the blood that the kidney typically does.
Wow. Every time to say that the kidney space, we've had some innovations over the last 30 years, but it feels like in the last, 4 or 5 years, things have just exploded in terms of research and innovation that's coming our way.
Yeah, it has, and it really is a function of the so-called basic research that scientists are doing. The more we understand how the kidney works and what stops it from working well, the better we are to be able to design both therapies and technology that can help replace that function. And from my standpoint, better still, prevent the function from getting worse in the first place. And so one of the things that I'm really excited about is that in recent years, the preventive kind of research has really been moving forward. When I was a fellow almost 40 years ago, we were really more focusing on how do you better treat existing kidney disease. But over the last 40 years, the research has advanced to the point that now we're really focusing on how do you keep someone with healthy kidneys maintaining healthy kidneys. And to me, that's a very important advancement of research going forward, the preventive type technologies.
I fully agree with you. What do you think? What are your views on the healthcare disparities? The things that we're hearing a lot about algorithms and how that's affecting who is selected for a transplant. So what are your views on that?
Well, healthcare disparities, as the name says, is that there are
Mhm.
highly disproportionate appearances of diseases that, in populations, depending on who you are, what your ethnicity is, and where you live. And chronic kidney disease is almost the poster child for that, is that it is really a good example of healthcare disparities. Black and brown and poor people are much more likely to have chronic kidney disease than those who are not. And because of that, as you said, people are trying to determine algorithms to help determine, based on some of the characteristics I've just said, who is at risk, and using those, for instance, artificial intelligence to help us determine that. One of the struggles that we're having right now is that the artificial intelligence algorithms are not being tested on a very diverse population. It is being tested primarily on populations that are not Black and brown. And one of the struggles with that is that if you're testing an algorithm on primarily, let's say, predominantly white populations or highly resourced populations, and then you try to apply that same algorithm to a Black and brown low resource population, the translation doesn't work very well. And so one of the strategies that we are now doing is, for instance, to try to get more Black and brown people in these examinations to help refine these artificial intelligence things. One of the struggles that we have right now in terms of COVID is that we're trying to determine, for instance, antibody responses to some of the antibodies, the vaccines that are being tested. And there are relatively few folks who are included in the populations who are Black and brown. And that's really a concern, because we want to be able to see that all populations can respond or not to a particular vaccine. And so that's why it's very important for us to be parts of those testing populations.
Yeah, and it's of concern because Black and brown people make up a large percentages of the folks who are adversely affected by COVID. So
Correct.
you have to have them in any sort of study that's being done in regards to antibodies. You definitely want to have the population that's affected by it.
Correct. Correct. So that means we need to ramp up our efforts to get individuals from Black and brown communities. And I understand, for someone who's been doing these kind of recruitments for studies for the last 30 years, very hard to get Black and brown folks to volunteer for studies because of the understandable suspicion that our communities have with respect to the medical research establishment, because we've performed very unethically in certain instances in the past.
Right.
We have used what we call trusted agency institutions in Dallas to help with that. And that has been primarily having relationships with our church partners who are able to provide us with that trusted agency that then we can leverage that in recruiting individuals for the chronic kidney disease studies that we've done. I think the same thing can be used to get folks into these COVID antibody tests.
I think you're right. We've at Texas Kidney Foundation, we have spent the majority of our time. We're a pretty young foundation. We've been in existence since 2011, but we've spent much of our time building relationships in the community to become a trusted agent, because it's a very important aspect of getting people the care that they need. People have to trust you
Yes,
in order to even want to accept the care from you that you're giving, because
correct,
it's not enough to just walk in and say, hey, we've got some tests for you,
correct.
and we want to give you these free tests and give you some free health care. It's because of the sordid history that
Yeah,
our nation has in regards to how we have conducted um, trials and studies in the past on ethnic minorities in
absolutely. So
this.
it's up to us and the medical research establishments to earn back that trust. And we've done that primarily by working with our church colleagues.
And I see like certain areas have done a great job. There are some universities that have done really well. There's a few programs that have like upwards of 10,000, 15,000 people who
Mhm.
have who are in their clinical trials and are ethnically diverse, and they've done a good job of building relationships like
Yep,
yours, like your program.
right. And I can tell you, Tiffany, we've been at it now for 10 years, and it
That's
is
right. I was
really,
going to say it takes years to
it
do
takes years to be able to build that type of trust. And
it.
so those of you who are encouraged to do that, be patient,
Mhm.
because you do have to build and earn that trust. And again, I emphasize, we have done it primarily by working with institutions that already have the trust of the community. And for us, that has been the faith community.
And that's how we've been reaching out as well, is in the faith community, because the faith community, they're there when nobody else is, when everybody when everybody else has rolled out. The faith community is still there with bake sales and putting on vaccination drives and
Mhm.
everything else, to keep people healthy, as healthy as they can and as they know to be, or how to be. I saw one. I saw something that the National Institute of Health is doing, and they have an entire series for the faith community for kidney disease
Mhm.
that can be taught in churches and in synagogues, and
Mhm.
wherever you uh, find people of faith gathered, you can teach them about kidney disease.
And we've learned that the best deliverer of that content information is our community health workers.
Hmm.
As good as I think I am in terms of talking about kidney disease,
Hmm.
um, we've learned that that message is much better delivered and received by individuals in the community who are closer to those that with whom they're working. And our community health workers are the best ambassadors for this in our work.
Dr. Wesson, thank you so much for coming and for talking to us about kidney disease and your wonderful research. Uh, I appreciate everything that you're doing for families, for the families that we serve. here in the great state of Texas and beyond, because your research definitely transcends the borders of the state of Texas. I'm just happy that we get to call you ours.
Well, thank you, Tiffany, for giving me the opportunity to talk. So hopefully this won't be the last time we get a chance to chat.
Oh, no, it won't be. You know, I'm going to keep on knocking on your door and calling you up. And you all have been listening to On the Record with Tiffany, and I just want you to remember that your health is in your hands. You're not helpless. You're not beaten down. You have people that will help you and help you walk through the trials and tribulations of healthcare. There are many of us out there. All you have to do is give us a call, stop by the foundation, email me, whatever way you want to contact us, contact us, but we'll help you walk through the difficulty of kidney disease and help you take back your power. You do have power. You do have a voice, and we're going to help you achieve that. And you've been listening to On the Record with Tiffany.